Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Creating in Fortnite. I am your host today, Tina. In case any of you are unfamiliar with me, I'm actually usually over on the Unreal Engine side of things, but today I'm stepping in for Shane while she's taking a little bit of time off. Everybody wish her a good little break there for a moment, so you're stuck with me. In the meantime, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the awesome, incredible Metallica event that went on and dig into some of the background behind it, what some of the development was like, all that good stuff. So let's just get into it because there's a lot to cover, a lot of really great questions, and a lot of things to just really dig into. So I'm going to toss it over to our guests to introduce themselves. Dan, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, yeah. My name's Dan Taylor. I'm one of the creative directors at Magnopus. I've been making video games for about 25 years. I've worked on loads of rubbish, which I really hope you haven't played or heard of. But I've also worked on Hitman, Deus Ex, and Tomb Raider, which was nice. And as a creative director, it's my job to help the team discover their best ideas and make them happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And next we have Ross. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. I'm Ross. I'm the lead engineer on the Metallica project. I've been at Magnopus for nearly 10 years now, games experience up to about 12 years. And yeah, for my job as a lead engineer is to make sure that we produce really high quality, robust work inside of Unreal and UEFN, and mainly been working at Magnopus within the Unreal Engine. So this was one of the first times I've worked in UEFN.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to hear more about this experience. I know there's a lot of stuff that went into it, a lot of learning curves, a lot of things that I'm sure other creators are going to be really interested in hearing about as far as the journey goes. But to kick us off, just so we have a little bit of context for anyone who might be unfamiliar, we actually have a trailer of the event that we'll go ahead and play now so you get an idea of what we're going to dive into. Awesome. So many cool things that happened along with this event that I want to know more about. I am desperate to know more about. So, Dan, I'm gonna kind of toss it over to you. I would love to know just kind of your general synopsis of just the event overall.
Yeah, well, so the event is essentially 10 minutes of foot to the floor heavy metal mayhem, set to five Metallica tracks. We've got four interactive sequences that cover driving, obby, Guitar Hero style, rhythm gameplay, and a boss fight. Interwoven with two concert zones where folks can just rock out and enjoy Metallica's epic performance at their own leisure. So yeah, that's kind of the experience in a nutshell.
Yeah, no big deal. Just casual.
Mm. It's intense. It's intense.
Yeah, yeah, and awesome and incredibly well made. Which, speaking of which, I just kind of want to toss it all the way back to the start of this whole journey here. What were the early stages of creating this experience like for you all?
I'll talk about the creative side of it, and it starts with two things: the band and the players. So we spent a lot of time doing a deep dive into Metallica, really getting to know all their music, not just like what it sounds like, but what it stands for as well, and their attitude, so we could like really represent them well in Fortnite, and then also getting to know the players, like what sort of things do they like, what is really popular on Fortnite, because we wanted to come up with something that had like a certain level of familiarity, so people could jump straight in and play it and know what they were doing, have a good time. But we also wanted to give it like a fresh heavy metal twists. And then we started off developing a visual identity with concept art and cool storyboards, and experimenting with crazy prototypes so we could find the fun, which I'm sure Ross will love to tell you all about.
Sure. Yeah, I think from the Fortnite perspective, like I said, it was many of us, it was our first kind of foray into using UEFN. So the early stages of the project was very much discovery, learning what we can actually pull off in UEFN. And then obviously Fortnite has a rich history of content experiences, and so there's a lot of weight and pressure to develop something that is along the lines of those. So we were looking at those and saying, well, how close can we get to that with UEFN, something that we haven't built in before? So we're looking at what's possible. So looking at all the devices and how we can use those creatively, melding those with the creative direction from Dan and the team to deliver on that heavy metal aesthetic. And because obviously, if we came into this as an Unreal project, we'd know, okay, we know how we could build it. We can build all the custom stuff, but it's really trying to lean on the strengths of the platform and making sure that the design is very sympathetic to what is possible in UEFN, but all at the same time making sure we're pushing the boundaries to make sure they're trying to build something as representative of the highest quality that we could make on that platform.
That is a very difficult tightrope to walk as well.
Yeah, I imagine. Because I know for your team overall, a lot of you have worked in Unreal Engine before, but I'm curious, had the team worked in UEFN before this, or was this kind of the first foray into that software?
For me, it was the first time I'd ever used UEFN, which was kind of cool. But I know a good chunk of the team had done a project called Nightwave before, which was kind of like a music-powered capture the flag type arena shooter, which is super cool. Do check it out. Yeah, so there was kind of a mix. Some people had, some people hadn't.
Yeah, I think with people's experience coming from Unreal, going into UEFN, it was really kind of refreshing to see quite how similar the two development platforms are. So opening up the UEFN editor and feeling like we're at home. This is Unreal Editor with some extra bells and whistles for Fortnite. There's a bit of abstraction to, I guess, make it a little more approachable. But we were able to leverage our kind of rich experience building content in Unreal Engine and to almost deploy that on day one to create content in UEFN.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like even though it's similar, it can't be easy to just open, what is arguably the first time UEFN and dive in for a project that was as big as this. So kudos to you and your team for really just diving headfirst into it. Overall, what would you say was it like working in the editor? I know you said it for you, Ross, it felt a little bit like home because it had some stuff that was similar to Unreal Engine, of course. But overall, how would you describe what it was like just working in UEFN?
So I think it was definitely felt as though that. I mean, first thing I want to say is I'm very thankful that Sequencer was there, almost like a fully featured version of Sequencer. We essentially had the entire experience of Sequencer. Without it, this project wouldn't be possible. And the material tools as well. We have the full, almost a full suite of material editor, being able to create custom materials. So a lot of the like rich visuals and effects work inside of that. We were able to deliver using that content. Niagara as well, that particle system that we were able to use. It was surprising just how much of the engine was just kind of open for us to just start working on. So it became as though that we'd approach things with the expectation after a while that, okay, we can do it in Unreal, so likelihood is we can do it in Fortnite. And that's, for the most part, that was the truth, really. We had to find there's some things that we learned that isn't supported in UEFN, and we had to find creative workarounds. But for the most part, it felt as very much like if we could build it in Unreal, we could build it in UEFN.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually kind of want to spin off of that a little bit just because I'm curious. Did you find any particular pros or cons with working with UEFN, especially with previous Unreal Engine experience?
So I think the biggest thing for me working in UEFN is the almost like out of the box interop with deploying to all the different platforms. So we could make a change on our desktop computer, we could push, I guess we could call it push a build or push an island code, and then within minutes we could be testing on Nintendo Switch, we could be testing on Android, we could be testing on our PS4, PS5, and I've never worked in a on a game or anything where we'd have that level of freedom. And we I just wanted to make it abundantly clear, we were using the live version of UEFN that everyone has access to. So we were getting the updates at the same time everyone else is getting the updates. We also change a course of development sometimes throughout development when a new feature would come in. So rocket racing was announced.
The car.
Development, and we're like, oh great, we want this in our experience.
Oh my god, the car! It's like, oh my god, this is so much better.
It completely changed Lux Eterna, because until we had rocket racing, we were using one of the other vehicles in UEFN.
Well, we had to redesign the track completely because the rocket racing car is twice as fast as the next fastest car in Fortnite, which means you need twice as much track. So it really like that so much better. It was super fun.
That's awesome. Were there any other things
the thing that I love about UEFN is the fact it is such a powerful tool for rapid prototyping, because you've got access to all of the Fortnite tools. You don't have as much control over it as you would do working directly in a game editor like Unreal. But the fact that you can just drop things in, hook it together, write a little bit of verse code, and kind of get a rough feel for what your game might be very, very quickly is super powerful. But on top of that, which I think is incredible, is the fact that you can get some of your teammates, jump into Fortnite, play test it together, drop back into UEFN, move some stuff around, tweak and test things, go straight back into the game and see how your changes have improved the gameplay experience. So it is, in terms of like rapidly iterating to find your fun as quickly as possible, it's a very powerful tool. And it got to the point where we were using the multiplayer feature of UEFN and Fortnite so much, we started having meetings in Fortnite where we'd meet up and we'd review the builds all together in Fortnite, and then we'd talk about them. And you could see like Peely chatting with like the big fish dudes, all about stuff. It was, it was weird, but fun.
It's a good point on the rapid prototyping and iteration. So I remember when we were developing and designing the track for Lux Eterna, what we ended up doing in one of the instances was we'd kick off a live session, and then we'd start throwing in and block out road pieces, and we could do that in the editor. We'd start moving things around in the editor. So we had the gizmo, we could move things out on 3D space as you'd expect to be able to do, and all the while you could see it just moving on your other screen and the live session. And then if you wanted to test, you just hit play. You're in the car, you start driving. It's like, oh, no, that corner needs tweaking. It needs to be a bit more curved, or this straight needs to be a bit longer. You need a speed boost here. Just add it in, and then instantly we're able to test it. So that iteration loop was really invaluable.
Yeah, I can imagine. I love the idea of just being able to pop in super quickly, adjust things on the fly, get things exactly how you wanted. I can't even imagine how that could help speed things along. How long did it take you overall to create this experience?
So it was about 8 months from start to finish, with a team of between 30 to 50 people at max.
You can't just say that like that's normal. That's wild.
I don't know. I mean, having never worked on a Fortnite content before, I don't know what the baseline is. Was that fast? Was that slow? I don't know.
I mean, 8 months to make an experience like that beginning to end is no small matter, especially even with a team of that size. That's really, really impressive. Did you have a strict deadline that you were working on or working towards while you were working on it? Or was it just, when it's done, it's done. It's released when it's done.
We had a very hard deadline for this because you have to organise everything with the band in advance. And get everything like set up immaculately. The date for the concert was like set in stone very early on, and we were very focused and aiming to hit that. And I think we worked, the full team worked pretty much until about a couple of weeks before the event, and then we kept a skeleton crew on just to apply that final bits of polish and to make sure like any bugs that popped up would get smushed before launch. But like the deadline was like it's got to be ready then. Which is nice. It's nice. It gives you a goal to aim at.
Yeah, definitely. It gives you that tablet of, okay, we need to stop, because I know a lot of us developers may fall into that hole of polish, polish, polish forever and ever and ever. So yeah, having that end deadline can help a lot with deciding when it's finally time to cut.
Well, like a video game is never finished; it's only released.
Right. Exactly. Kind of going off of that though, I harkening back to sort of what you were saying earlier as well about being able to just pop in and change things really quickly. Was it helpful to be able to have that kind of maneuverability, especially when you're getting closer to that deadline of being able to change stuff even up to within just a couple weeks of release?
That is an interesting question. I think like a lot of the core gameplay was kind of locked early on because we found the fun in the prototyping session. There were a few areas where we switched stuff up kind of later on in the project, and we were still polishing and tweaking and getting things right. One of my I don't know whether this is a sad story or a happy story. I'll let you guys decide. One of the interesting stories is that we really wanted to, from the very beginning, we wanted to recreate the kind of kinetic frenzy of a mosh pit in Fortnite. We spent so much time prototyping, researching, kind of using like impulse grenades, pinball barriers, like slippery ice floors, all sorts of stuff. We thought we had something that was really cool. We put it in the game, and then I think like the week before we shipped, everyone's like, it's really distracting. People just bounce up and down and mosh, and they don't look at Metallica, and you miss all of this amazing stuff. I think we should take it out. And I was like, I can't disagree. Actually, yeah, we're going to have to take it out. And then, literally like 5 days later, someone said, I think we need to put it back in somewhere. I was like, where? How about right at the end? So he like shoehorned it in right at the end in like a very subtly changed way, and it worked beautifully. And it was, yeah, that was quite good. We wouldn't have been able to do that in a project where in a development environment where the iteration time wasn't fast and petty.
Yeah. Last minute mosh pit is not exactly what was on my bingo card for this interview,
Yeah.
but I appreciate being able to have it on there. um, let's see. How did the project evolve over time then, if at all, since it sounds like a lot of it was kind of nailed down early on? Did things kind of change and adapt as you continued to build it?
It did, yeah. So initially, we wanted to make the stadium section super interactive with lots of kind of like little ancillary gameplay that you could do around the side. But like I mentioned with the moshing, it really detracted from the kind of concert experience. So we stripped them down and like just made them very much about watching the band. And there's also like a whole section that started off as like an action-packed kind of rail shooter, which we changed into a beautiful rhythm-based game, which Ross made.
Oh yeah, well, the whole team made it, but I did have little hands in making that. Yeah, I mean, it definitely changed a lot, and part of it was down to iterating and finding the fun, seeing what worked. Some of it was down to the platform not necessarily meeting our ambitions in certain respects. So, with regards to that section where we did have the rail shooter, we did have the idea that after For Whom the Bell Tolls, everybody would go into like their own single player experience before rejoining and like a big triumphant like return. So
For Whom the Bell Tolls is all about loss.
Yeah,
because we wanted to get that theme across.
Right.
So we were trying to marry that in with the gameplay. So we, for the longest time in development, we had a system in which, after For Whom the Bell Tolls, everybody would be teleported discreetly off into their own unique part of the environment, and they have their own rails they can grind down, and then halfway through the Master of Puppets section, they'd have their own solo boss fight before returning together as a full squad of 16 to then go fight the Master
Like
of Puppets
Avengers
again.
Endgame.
Yeah.
All come out of portals and like kicking butt. It'd be great.
But we were bound by all the same restrictions that any creative developer in UFN Fortnite would be bound to. So that thermometer, we realized that all of the grind rails that we duplicated. So we had 4 grind rails per player, and there were 16 players. And each of those grind rails was really eating into our thermometer, and we realized that there's no way we can ship like it's almost taking up like 90% of our thermometer. It was like we can't fit the rest of the game into 10%, so we had to restructure and be like, okay, let's think about this, and we restructured it to be that rhythm based all multiplayer kind of jumping between those grind rails before going into the restructured Master of Puppets boss fight with all the platforms and the lasers and all that good stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a really creative way of kind of twisting the idea into something that fits a little bit better into the space allocated. How, if you can give me this peek behind the curtain, if you can't, it's okay. But I am curious how you ended up coming to that conclusion. Like that is how you ended up twisting the gameplay into what it is now.
In terms of going from the rail shoots to the rhythm section.
Yeah.
Well, on my side, we spent a lot of work on the rail shooter, and we were all playing. It was like it doesn't feel exciting. The jumping is kind of clunky. The little flying creatures that we made weren't quite right, and we took a long, hard look at it and thought, in order to get this to a level where it's absolutely incredible and like sings as hard as the rest of the experience, we're not gonna be able to do it. We have to come up with a plan B. I think one of my friends, who's like also a game director, he said that a video game is always a collection of plan Bs, which I thought was a fantastic way of describing game development. So yeah, we had to like plan B it. And Ross came up with this crazy cool rhythm game. So we used that because it was fun.
That's awesome. I love seeing that kind of adaptability. Because it's hard, but it is also just part of the process, right? Finding what can work, what can ultimately fit in the experience. I know this is kind of a similar question, but I'm curious if it expands out from there anywhere. But did everything beyond, like we just talked about with having to swap from the rail shooter to the rhythm game, did everything everywhere else go according to plan, or did you need to pivot on other aspects of the project while you were making it?
I think everything else went according to plan, didn't it, Ross?
Yeah, for the most part. If we look back at like the concept art and where the experience sits today, we're very close to what our original ambitions were for the project. I mean, this section here with the Master of Puppets, this was originally on rails as well. So it's part of the rail shooter where you'd kind of sweep around the Master of Puppets, and I think there was even a concept in which the Master of Puppets would shoot lightning. You'd grind the lightning or ride the lightning, and you start shooting at the Master of Puppets. But I think it's more to do with what felt right in the time. We also have to remember that we only had like between 30 and 60 seconds of songs for each track, and in that time we have to teach the player what the game mechanics are. They have to kind of intuit, they have to understand it from the get-go, because we don't have time to like teach the player like there's a tutorial section like this is how to play the Master of Puppets last fight. So this is why the design language here is very almost it's literally in your face. Throws the hand out, you see the nice iconic red eye that you know you need to go ahead and shoot.
Do the weak spot for massive damage.
Yeah, exactly. There's some creative solutions we had to employ for like the in the Master Puppets boss fight section. They have those little hit health bars, and those are actually particle effects that we are actually scaling through Verse, which then interfaces with Niagara system to change the slider. Just because UMG there's no analogy for a widget component or anything in UFN that we found at the time. So we leveraged Niagara systems a lot to build a lot of gameplay driven content, which is something that we wouldn't necessarily have done in Unreal Engine.
Yeah. That is really interesting, actually. And I didn't even consider that, the fact that there's not really, you can't just have a tutorial that someone can play through first.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how long did it take you to find that sweet spot of feeling like a player can get in and know what they have to do without you having to give them something like a tutorial to go through?
I think I think we were quite lucky. Well, I say quite lucky actually. I was going to say I think we were quite lucky that we nailed it first time. But actually, going back to what I said earlier, it was a very conscious decision to develop things that were familiar and instantly accessible, so we didn't have to do onboarding. When you're making a video game, onboarding is one of those things that everybody overlooks, and then you go to test your game, and nobody knows what the hell is going on. It's like you didn't put any onboarding in, which is why it's always like one of the first things that I develop as a game developer, because you can't test anything with no onboarding. And so it was really, really important that everything was instantly accessible. We were kind of vindicated when we started to do our first test, and we get people in Lux to turn around and be like, are they going to just do donuts at the start? Are they going to chase the band? What's going on? And they all just tanked off down the track, like, yeah, this is brilliant. And then they like had fun at the dance, and then they were climbing up the town, no problems. And it was just like, yeah,
It works. They know what they
thank
have to
God.
do. Just innate for the players. That's always the best
Yeah,
feeling, right? When they
yeah.
can just pop in and they know just what they got to do.
Yeah, and one of the interesting design challenges in something like this is there is so much eye candy everywhere, and the band's like warping in like bolts of lightning and shredding, and like you got crazy flying monsters and all sorts of stuff. So keeping people focused on where they've got to go is quite tough. So if you look at actually this video that's on the screen right now, you'll see that the band will always teleport in directly in your line of sight where you're supposed to go. So that iCandy is guiding the players through this level, so that we can actually use it kind of as like some kind of visual language. Because if we put it in the opposite direction, people just stop and go, "Ooh, look at that! It's Metallica."
I think
That
one
would
of
be
the
me.
challenges of building an experience that's tied to music, it's almost like creating a playable music video. So all of these times when these characters are popping up, they're popping up to the beat, and we need to make sure that we're motivating the player to be in the right place at the right time, looking at the right thing. And we need to do that in a way that doesn't feel contrived. I think, especially Dan did an awesome job curating the For Him the Bell section to make it feel like that. So from a timing perspective, the players are motivated to move up tower, and they're in the right position. And there's a few little forks in the road where people could choose different things, and they could see different band members. So there's a little bit of replayability in there as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Ross. I mean, the actual band animations in this section for Whom the Bell Tolls is quite interesting, because we had all the mocap footage from Industrial Light and Magic of the entire band dancing and like performing and doing with the guitars and all that stuff. And what we actually had to do is slow down the video footage so it matched the music, because they actually play For Whom the Bell Tolls faster live. And then we cherry picked their best moves. So when you look at this, you'll see James will always be like fist pumping, and Rob will be like moshing out. And like all of the little characters, Kurt will be like, oh, he always like does that with his guitar. You actually got to know and recognize all of the band members just in their little stickman form by the way that they moved. Like Kirk never stays still; he wanders all over the place. And so we actually watched the video and got all of their best dance moves, and they went, okay, this is the best move. We'll spawn him in here doing that move. He'll come in here doing that move. We'll come in here doing that move. And we mapped it out to the music and the gameplay as well. So it all fitted. So it was like, I really enjoyed doing that. That was a lot of fun.
A lot of moving parts to get all to work together.
And it meant that we only had to use a quarter of the animation data as well.
Yeah, and on that animation data as well, from a budget perspective, the animation data we had for the band. Now, obviously, the band's at the start of the show, so you're going to allocate a healthy portion of your budget to that. And the thing, from a file size weight perspective, it was definitely the heaviest hitter. And what we needed to do is we had some holograms in which we wanted to make sure that the characters were still. And if this was a project where we weren't necessarily bound by those limitations, we would have just spout a different type of another animation asset that had the characters rooted, and we just play those. We do that routing inside of Maya or whatever package. But what we actually ended up doing, I think we have a corrective video for this in which we used Unreal to get that animation data. And then in sequence that we used the take recorder to record a counter transform so that we could route that character in place. So as Kirk was walking across the stage, he'd be walking across the stage inside of Fortnite, but then we would actually apply a corrective transform on a second instance of that character device, which would then mean that he would be walking on the spot in the hologram, but walking on the stage in the non-hologram version, but that was using the same animation data. So we kept everything nice and tidy and within budget. So this is video here.
Tell them how you did the amazing hologram effect as well, because that is super cool.
Oh, right. So with the hologram effect, we had I'm not sure if this is still the case, but we weren't able to apply any kind of materials to any of the character devices. Here's Jonesy playing the guitar here. So what we ended up doing was we created a local post-process effect, which was we created a material using a standard material editor in UEFN, which allowed us to apply some kind of non-trivial localized post-process screen space effect. So we've got this kind of glitch effect, distortion, almost like scanline visual effect. We use some cool stuff to kind of get that almost like a dot matrix visual on here. And this allowed us to apply these kind of post effects locally to these characters without having to apply those materials.
Ross is basically a visual wizard. He's responsible for anything that looks amazing in the Metallica experience.
High praise from the creative director.
The art team might have something to say about that, but
oh yeah, well, okay, yeah. We also had a team of very talented VFX artists, VFX specialists and artists. Yes, but that doesn't take away from your wizardry, Ross.
Exactly. Still lots of magic to go around. Yeah, I love being able to see kind of what you were talking about in the hologram there too, for a moment where, yeah, it looks kind of like it's pixelating, almost falling apart, staticky before going back to its full form. That was a really, really cool effect. So with all of this, what would you say was the biggest change overall that you would say ended up getting into the final experience? I know we've talked about a few things that may have adapted a little bit over time, but I'm curious if you had to say that one was the most changed from beginning to end, from original plan to ship.
Yeah, we did have to cut the Spice Girls cameo.
Oh, unacceptable.
No, we didn't. There was no Spice Girls cameo. We've already talked about not splitting players up during For Whom the Bell Tolls. I think for me that was the biggest thing that we had to change. So that and the Master of Puppets changing from a rail shooter to a rhythm-based game, quite a large change. But other than that, it's all pretty much as originally designed, which was amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Ross? Do you feel the same way? Would you say that's the thing that changed most?
I think it has to be the Master of Puppets section. That entire section went through a lot of iteration, a lot of changes all the way throughout development. But I'm happy with what we ended up with in the end. I think the changes were for the better.
The boss fight has got a lot of very technical, kind of scripted intelligence to it as well. So he'll track the platform that the most players are on, and he'll destroy that, because we really wanted to encourage players to jump from platform to platform. And there's a whole lot of it. Ross, you'll probably be able to explain that to me. So there's verse code working in tandem with the sequencer to make that all happen.
Yeah, the boss fight was a really interesting challenge. And one of the things that we needed to do with the boss fight was we needed to make sure that if you've played the experience, you may know that there's a win state and a lose state. Which was something that we toyed with the idea of, we're going to what for the longest time, it was you always beat the Master of Puppets. And we thought, well, that's not going to feel great if you play through it again and you're just not really engaging with it. It's like, oh, it's all fake, it's all smoke and mirrors. So we did end up creating that win state and lose state, and a lot of it's just all of those platforms have their own cinematic sequence devices with their own sequences. They're all linked up with verses. So it's quite a web of devices all strung together in the end to pull that off. But the interesting thing was we also had to make sure that moment happens roughly to the time of the music. So when the track ended, you wanted to make sure that the players are going to have that success or that fail state at that time. You don't want it to happen too soon or too late. And I hope you don't mind me showing this, Dan, but up until this final attack that we're looking at now, all of the hit point, all the hit damage you do is kind of irrelevant because we recalibrate all of the hit points at the final point to make sure that as you're defeating the Master Puppets in this final section, or not defeating the Master Puppets in this final section, all you have to do is destroy all of the eyes, and the hit points on the health bar will go down proportionally to whatever the health bar you have left. So we'd be play testing, and because some of the development team knew this, there'd be a lot of us just kind of sitting there waiting for the Master Puppets to do his thing. And then
nobody told me this. I was like guns blazing trying to get rid of it.
Yeah, we didn't tell you. That'd be too much like good fun. But yeah, that was a really a fun and challenging thing to pull off, and I'm really happy with what we ended up with.
That is awesome. Think of it this way, Dan. They just wanted you to feel like you were the main hero of the story. That's what it was.
I can live with that.
Can you recall one of the biggest hurdles of the project overall and how you managed to work through it? Because I imagine there's got to be some things that were a little difficult, at least like either through learning curve or just figuring out how to get to the result that you wanted. I'm curious if you had to like in a list put one as the biggest hurdle, what would you call that to be?
Probably memory, because you've got like a very strict cap on how big your island code can be, how big the project can be, and how much memory you can have at any one time. And Ross kind of mentioned this before. There's like so much data with just the animation. You have to be very clever about how you use like breaking up the band, like turning them into silhouettes in Master of Puppets, and all of that good stuff. And one of the things that I think Ross actually set up, which was pretty good, was using data layers for each of the experiences and each section of the experience, so we could stream it in as and when we needed it. And in order to do that, we had to. I'm going to pass it over to Ross. It's getting very technical. We had to hism the environment. I don't even know what hism means, so I'm going to pass that to Ross, who will be able to tell you all about it.
Yeah. So the little trick that we ended up using was all of the static mesh actors in the scene. We batched them into a HISM, or a hierarchical instance static mesh component, which meant that they could all be batched inside a single job call. So that was more to do with runtime performance. So that was obviously something that we needed to bear in mind, especially on like the lower end platforms, and that was a challenge. But with regards to the keeping everything within, I think it was something like 400 megabytes or something, and a lot of that being the animation data, that we had a very small overhead to play with, so we had to be really clever with how we use textures, materials, geometry, anything that had any kind of like weight to it. We had to be really clever with reuse, and yeah, that was probably one of the things that we battled a lot with. One of the surprising things though was we came to the engineering team came to the project with no experience in verse, so we thought, okay, we're going to build a project in UFN. We need to learn a new language. Let's do this. But verse was really quick to pick up, and it's really well integrated into UFN, as you might expect. So that became, a worry of the past very quickly. Became very comfortable with writing verse scripts and backing the experience off of it.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. I personally also really love diving into verse and kind of experimenting with it, seeing what all can be done there. And with that in mind, the fact that it was relatively easy for you and your team to pick up, on the opposite side of things from the biggest hurdle and all that, was there anything that you were expecting to be super difficult that ended up going smoother than assumed, such as being able to learn verse a little bit easier than you might have expected?
Yeah, I think verse is definitely the main one, and then testing was joyous, really. Like being able to some of the pains in development is sometimes you're like kicking a build, waiting for the build to finish, deploy it on all the platforms, get everyone in the room to test. But like with this, you create an island code, you share it with the team, everyone jumps on, and you're playing instantly.
We did the testing was actually too much fun, and it degenerated into like a bit of a bun fight most of the time. And so we had to actually be very structured in our testing approach. So it would be like, okay, no chat, no mucking about. We're going to play. I'm going to do feedback and commentary, and then once we've had like a serious play, then we can all have a fun play through. So we like it was too much fun, and we had to get quite strict on ourselves to keep the playtest focused.
That's hilarious and a good
Yeah.
sign, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're what I found really encouraging is like even 8 months into the project, I was still having fun playing it. I didn't ever get to the point where I'm like, oh my god, if I have to play this again today, I'm just don't. But occasionally you get like that on something on projects, but not on this one, which is like very encouraging. But going back to a question about stuff that was easier than expected, there is in For Whom the Bell Tolls, which is on screen right now, as if on cue, because it has to all be in sync with the music, and people can fall off the track and die, or go too fast and get ahead, or go too slow and lag behind. We had to create a dynamic respawn system that would respawn people at the best place on the track if they died, or if they lag behind, or if they stuff. And that was actually laughably easy to do. It's just one respawn point, which we animated along different points along the track. So it was always at the perfect point to the music. And when you died, you just walked to the perfect spot.
Easy.
Because everyone was like, "How are we going to do that? It's so complicated. It's going to be different." No, we just animate the respawn point, please.
That is a really clever way of going about that, actually.
Yeah,
Don't mind
it's just
me,
like,
just taking notes
well,
here.
yeah. The way we did it though was not so clever, because I actually implemented loads and loads and loads and loads of respawn points. And I thought, yeah, we're gonna have to do something really clever. And I was like, no, I could just animate one of them actually. Well, delete those, and it's right.
It just works. Love
Yeah.
that. What was your favorite part of working on this experience overall? It's a big question. It sounds simple, and I know it's not, so I
It is.
appreciate if it takes a second to actually answer, but
I know what mine is. What was yours, Ross?
I do generally think it was a love-hate relationship with working on Master Puppets, just because of the amount of iteration. But I think working on that boss fight and having that divergent path of the win state, the lose state, I think that was probably the most rewarding thing to work on. And then my favorite part really was releasing it into the world, because for the longest time we were just playing it internally, thinking, "Oh, is this gonna land?" And then have it launch and see the Metallica fans, the Fortnite fans play it, it was super rewarding.
Yeah, yeah. My I don't know how I'm going to top that. That's delightful. My favourite thing, aside from listening to them, obviously, it was adding all of the juice to the events, particularly the musical juice. So it was really important that the soundtrack didn't, or the music rather, didn't just feel like a soundtrack. It's not like you're not playing a game and Metallica's music is in the background. We wanted to really weave it into not just the gameplay, but also kind of the environment and the art. So we added in kind of like FOV pulses on bass drums, like camera shake on crash cymbals, things in the environment would pulse to the guitar shredding. So if you if you're playing through Lux Eterna, there are 7 different things that all pulse in time with different parts of the music. So there's the lava on the road, there's the camera FOV, there's the lights at the checkpoint, there's the clouds in the sky, the light beams from the stadium. And when you add that stuff in, they're all of those little things that you might not notice on their own individually, really glue the music to the environment, which makes it feel really special.
Yeah. I love both of those answers actually. So,
And also releasing it, obviously.
of course, it being out there and people playing it and enjoying it, of
Mhm,
course.
mhm. There was one guy who streamed it, and in For Whom the Bell Tolls, Rob and Kirk do something I'm assuming is known as the crab, which is like a special like guitar off where they get like low and like they crawl around and shove each other's faces. And we put that in on the cogs, and we weren't going to do that originally because we wanted to have like only one band member at a time. But when we watched the video, I was like, "This is so cool! We have to put that in." And this streamer who was streaming it, I think he must have been a massive Metallica fan because it was like all of his Christmases come at once. Like, oh my god, they put the crab in, and that was really quite a moment.
What a moment. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine, yeah, what that would be like being able to watch somebody play your experience that you poured your heart and soul into and having a reaction like that, being like, "Oh my god, this is exactly what I wanted out of this." That's awesome.
But I think as creators of entertainment and video games or whatever, like our job is to evoke an emotional reaction in the people playing our games. I mean, like if people are ambivalent to what you're doing, you're clearly not doing it right. Or if they hate it, that's better. If they love it, that's even better. Um, and to be able to watch people play through it and see them enjoy things, and I also comment on things. Oh, I don't like this. That could be better. It was still like a magical thing.
Yeah, definitely. If y'all are up for it, I have one final question for you, but there's a couple really good ones from chat that I would love
Oh,
to throw
nice.
your way. Um, the first one is for both of you, but I think it might be slightly more directed towards you, Dan. Just in that they noticed that, of course, each area really felt like it had its own theme, its own color scheme, was its own really defined, uniquely designed space. And they were wondering if you wouldn't mind kind of going through what the process was like, making each space feel like its own unique part of the experience, yet still have it all work together by the end of it.
Is our art director in the chat? Did she ask that?
I can't say.
Um,
I can neither confirm
oh,
nor deny.
we definitely wanted every sequence to have its own kind of visual, but also we wanted to tie everything together. So while we were doing the concept art, we did a color script for the entire thing, so we could see how the color evolved. And I think one of the few bits of feedback we got from Metallica, who were wonderful to work with, was that they wanted the Lux Eterna volcano to be a bit more yellow to match the cover of the album that it came from. And so we kind of pushed that a little bit more yellow. We pushed reds more into the volcanic sections. We wanted Master of Puppets to be. We wanted the Clockwork Tower to have like lots of kind of very gothic heavy metal elements to it and references to kind of some of their album covers. You look like the gargoyle from I forget which Metallica album it's from now. -10 Metallica points for me. But yeah, there's a gargoyle from one of their album covers. There's Lady Justice for from and Justice for All is in there as well. So we put loads of little kind of album cover Easter eggs in to inform stuff. And then for the Master Puppets, it's interesting because it's a very dark song. It's a very, very dark song with some quite serious subject matter. And we wanted to kind of allude to that with the kind of like ethereal, spooky visuals and like the kind of hypnotic blue and purple color scheme. And we didn't want to do that in a literal way. We wanted to kind of just keep it kind of light and suggestive. Yeah, and then the end of it. So what's interesting for the final section if you're a Metallica fan, you'll recognize the layout as a snake pit, which is Metallica. They have like a circular stage, and all the VIPs are in the middle of the circular stage, so they're super close to the band, and it's very exciting and very intimate. And we really wanted to be able to kind of bring that intimate VIP experience to all the Fortnite players. So we modelled the final arena on the kind of like VIP snake pit bit. So I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I imagine so. I'm
Mm.
satisfied with that answer. So
Yeah. Ross, you had a hand in a lot of the look dev. Anything I missed?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd add, I guess, from a technical side is each of the different tracks we associated with their own data layers. So we'd have a data layer for Lux Turner, a data layer for Bartels, etc. We also separated those into some subsequent data layers. So for whom the Bartels, I think, was split into a data layer per section of that track, and that just meant we can isolate each of those all of the content in each of those tracks, so that we could iterate on them and make sure we only load the content in for that at one point. So it meant we had different lighting devices and different scenes, and we didn't have to worry about overstepping. But in terms of the layout spatially, every part of, if you were to look at the map top down, I think it's like there's the Morricone intro section, and then the next door to Morricone, I think it's a little higher up in the sky, and there's Luxaturn, and then it goes into Fundamental. So it's all mapped out in bold partition spatially, but they're all kind of siloed off in their own little data layers.
really interesting. I love the idea of kind of getting that sneak peek from just the snapshot from straight above of all of them, seeing them all kind of lined up next to each other like that. Another question from chat here that I wanted to toss y'all's way is there's actually someone who's curious about going over from Unreal Engine into UEFN, and they were wondering, out of the devices specifically, if there was one that surprised you, either because it was incredibly useful, it was very robust, or just if there was one that kind of surprised you with its usability.
Sequencer every time.
Yeah, so it's a cinematic sequence device. So you can get away with and do a lot with sequencer. A lot of the stuff that you might ordinarily script with Blueprint or C++ or whatever it may be in Unreal, you can almost do through sequencer. So like the boss fight's the prime example. We have a whole like we essentially built a state machine out of cinematic sequence devices and verse devices. But the other one that I kind of want to shout out is the trigger device. It sounds really simple, but halfway through development, UFN released gameplay events on Sequencer, so you could fire gameplay events through Sequencer, and that was our kind of key portal to being able to interface with Verse through Sequencer. So we'd have gameplay events that would fire on these trigger devices that would then speak to Verse, which would then basically do all of the cool stuff that we needed to do. And actually, one other thing I would add to that was the HUD device. So throughout development, we had a debug HUD, which allowed us to kind of hop, skip, and jump between all the different tracks, which was really instrumental to being able to test these experiences. Like, we didn't necessarily, I mean, as much as we loved the experience, every time we wanted to test Enter Sandman, we didn't necessarily need to go through the previous 6 minutes of the experience. So having that HUD device to be able to teleport to those different sections was really invaluable.
We're quite lucky to have, like, as new features came online, we would very quickly like integrate them into the experience and leverage them. And like the Unreal team are always adding more features to UEFN. And the only analogy that pops into my head is the bit in Wallace and Gromit where they're having the chase on the trains. They're laying the track in front of the train as they're going along. But it wasn't quite that comedy. It was a bit more considered and design-led, obviously.
It's a great visual to have, though. Great visual representation. All right. Well, I think the last question that I have for y'all, so I'm not just keeping you here all day. Otherwise, I would, because I have so many more questions. This whole thing was amazing and turned out so well. But the final question I have for the both of you is, now that it's completed and released, it's out there for anyone who's interested. Go check it out, go play it, of course. But what is some advice that you would offer other creators or developers based off of what you learned while building this project?
For me, I'd say just really leverage the fact that you've got access to all of the Fortnite tools. Just experiment, test with your mates, iterate, find something really fun. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like pick something familiar, but give it your own like fresh, unique twists. And then, most importantly, because you've got the Fortnite ecosystem, release it and see what people make it. Because I think that's it sounds really obvious. Oh yeah, release yourself. But I think it's the last and most difficult stage of the development process, which definitely a lot of younger aspiring developers kind of miss out on. And your experience will change and grow massively once your stuff comes into contact with the public.
Yes, that's a great answer, Dan. Well, I'd just add to that is I'd learn the devices. What I would do if I was new to UFN, I was jumping in, and something that we did early in development was just go in, just ping out all the devices, see what they do, experiment with them, play with them, have some fun, and then think about what you can do creatively. What can you do to bring these devices together to build something new and engaging and fun and exciting? And maybe something that someone hasn't seen before. Because the Metallica experience was built upon a lot of devices that was stuck together in creative ways to build new gameplay content, and that's really quick and easy with the UFM platform.
Yeah. That's awesome. Both of those, I think, are fantastic pieces of advice for people to kind of keep in their back pocket going forward with their own projects. Um, yeah. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to be here today and answering
You're
these
most welcome.
questions. Yeah, walking us through this whole incredible experience. A lot to learn here. A lot that's just fun and enjoyable to look at and experience as well. So, thank you first of all for making it, taking the time to do that, and then of course again, thank you for being here today with us and answering these questions and hanging out. It's always fun.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina.
Of course. And thank you, everybody who came to watch the show. Wouldn't be what it is without you and your participation. And hopefully, you also going out there and making some really cool experiences for people to pick up and play and have a lot of fun in. So go create, make, do the thing, please, and thank
Yeah.
you. If anybody popped in about halfway through or any part of the way through and you missed some of the stuff that happened earlier, that's totally fine because we actually post all of our streams in video format that can be viewed on demand on both our Twitch and YouTube channel, on both Unreal Engine and the F and Create channels. So it's available in lots of places nebulously amongst the internet. So you can find it if you need that information, watch it at your leisure, go back and look at all the cool stuff. You could do it whenever you need to. So we'll have that available for y'all soon. And I think last thing, really, I think it's fitting if we maybe end out on the trailer just one last time so people can get that nice little snippet of the final experience. What do y'all think?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it. We'll play the trailer and then that'll be that. So, bye everybody.